people asked, and I want to ask, like, the enough question. Like, we haven't talked about that in a while. Like, what's the number for you guys where you're like, enough? Like, you would choose to stop playing the game and do your version of what he did, which was like, I'm just going to be in my beautiful homes. I have my 5-6 homes. I'm going to write my poetry. Maybe it's play my pickleball and my piano. Like, what's the number where you're,
I mean, this question is so good. I think this is like alluding to like our one deeper topic. I think like I can give you my answer, but I think there's a bigger thing at play here, which is like, I think most people don't ever have enough. And that's an issue. That's like the big problem is that like people, particularly Americans, get stuck in a rut. The rut is this idea that you are like bred to strive and achieve always. And that people forget that like there's other things in life and you're just like constantly on this like one lane.
I think it's better asked if you say, what would you tell someone else? Like,
but it's so subjective, isn't it?
Totally. That's why it's like, what would you tell someone else?
I don't know if I would tell someone else because our lifestyle desires are so different. I do want to fly on private jets. I do want a life staff. I do want a home in Queenstown and a penthouse in New York City and, my big main home. And, I want...
40 million is a nightmare.
40 million is such a nightmare.
It's an absolute nightmare. It sounds like one, right? The way I talk about it. I mean,
the carry on those homes is probably like 3-4 million a year.
If you consider how old the book is, he kind of talks about 10 million being a nightmare. He's like, it's kind of a nightmare. And like, you get rich and you have all these money managers and advisors, and next thing you know, like you don't feel as rich and you just keep playing the game. And he went through that. He was like, I got unhealthy, addicted to horrors. And, next thing I knew, I was like not living the life that I could have stopped, but I didn't. And then eventually he stops and he's like, takes a break for 5 years. And he's like, okay, I should write this book and kind of like share how I stopped. But it's different for everybody.
10 million is kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like this, I can't believe I just said that. But like, I get how that happens, you kind of get to that number and you're like, wow, I'm so fucking rich. But then like the year you got to that number, maybe you made like a couple mil and then like a million goes out in taxes and then you're below 10 already. And then you buy a house, you do this other stuff. And then you start going down a path, you develop some expensive habits. And then the next thing you know, like your overhead balloons. And then maybe you make a couple of dumb investments, you get a little loose. Now your 9 million becomes like 8, becomes 7. Now you're like, oh, fuck. And now you've kind of bloated.
You're stressed.
You're stressed. You've taken off all this stuff and you're not rich enough where you just be like, write it off. And then you mentally were like, oh, I'm at this thing and I can go to this level now and do all this stuff. But actually you just like kind of fucked yourself and now you're trapped and you took up all this other stuff. And now you can't go back because you already like kind of set your foot in that door. You already kind of like declared to the world like, oh, I'm kind of rich now. And then you can't like downgrade your house. You can't.
Ooh, that's the biggest trap. Once you tell people.
Oh yeah, you never
biggest
tell
trap
people.
ever.
Never tell people.
A lot of it is how you get it, right? So if you're accumulating, but your lifestyle is increasing alongside the accumulation, I think you're really fucked. Naval talks about this idea of like the greatest blessing that could happen to you is you have windfalls of cash and you don't rely on income, a consistent income. A windfall of cash is a blessing because you have to reevaluate everything and you might adjust up your lifestyle to a certain degree. But if you made $15 million, $20 million, you're most likely not going to just go crazy all of a sudden. You'll adjust in increments along the way. So I think a windfall is a great scenario, but it's also great to just like build a portfolio that gets to 10 and then 15 and 20 million over time and up, but without, falling into the hedonic treadmill trap of like, okay, now I can do this and do this and do this. And then all you're doing is trying to sustain that lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it in California, you get $10 million, you can basically get like 500 or 600K a year and kind of like revenue off of that. Right. But then half of it's gone. You got 300, and 300 is enough to like.
Oh, you're not investing in the mailbox money? You have to pay money on your. Okay, sorry. Thought you learned nothing.
Don't derail me.
I'm sorry.
But like, but yeah, then you have 300, and that's like you buy like a $2 million house. That's nothing around here. That's like a 2,200 square foot house. And now like 150 of that is gone in mortgage and tax. And now you have like 150K, which is like
I don't think you can afford a nanny with that.
No.
Okay, hold on.
Like that money in California, it gets incinerated.
There's no staff.
It's incinerated.
Well, not even one.
You have to make 10 mil, and then you have to live you have to continue living.
You have to track a budget.
Yeah, you have to live in like a very austere lifestyle still, and then
you still
like
have to. You still have to question
room.
how your wife is spending money at that level.
But yeah,
I want to get to the level where I don't give a fuck what you spend.
You don't think about this in advance. So you don't think about all the ways it gets eaten up, and then you like, you expand too much, and then you're like, oh God, what have I done? And then
well, I'll answer the question first. That's why my answer is a huge amount of money, because I don't want to think about these things ever again. I mean, like my real number is like 25, but my desired number is like 50 plus. And like, how do you do that? I don't think you do that through investing. You need a large windfall of cash. You need an exit or two, and you need severe ownership levels. And the acquisition needs to be for 9 figures or close to that.
And you can't necessarily get there going the path that we talked, like the hopping from Facebook to Google to Uber or whatever, right?
Not to that level.
Not to that level.
But back to your windfall comment, Eric in the chat mentioned, he said, like, what about lottery winners? Those guys tend to go broke.
That's what I was thinking about when you said that.
I didn't resonate with the windfall thing.
To me, it was the opposite.
I felt like the opposite was true.
But the windfall earned versus not is a huge differentiator. Like a windfall that is earned is like a responsible person who worked their whole life to achieve something has a windfall, versus like a lottery winner who maybe doesn't have the education, the resources, and the network to advise them is going to blow that cash. Honestly, the same thing applies to athletes. Athletes earn the money for sure. They're working for it. Being an athlete is a job, don't get me wrong. But the amount of money that they're earning is so insane, and they're surrounded by peers that are not managing their money well. So Shaq talks about this a lot, right? Like you're surrounded by a bunch of fuckos that are telling you the best thing you can do is buy 3 Bugattis. And then next thing you know, you're bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't work either. You have the right people in your court, the right advisors, and Shaq has proven himself to be a phenomenal money, manager and investor.
There's a crazy stat, like 80% of professional athletes end up in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
That was like according to ESPN,
Absolutely
30 by 30.
crazy.
It's crazy.
Oh, did
Absolutely
you watch that
crazy.
30 for 30?
Yeah. It's called broke.
One of the NFL players, he's talking about, he's like, I was literally on my way to pay for my alimony check, and I drive by the dealership. I just had to have it. I had to have the new car. So I literally went and spent my most recent check. Instead of going pay for alimony, I went and bought a new car cash. And you're like watching these grown men tell these stories. And granted, they weren't grown men when they made these mistakes, but
That's part of the problem is that these athletes are like 21 years old.
Yeah. But a business owner who's been working for 10, 20 years to achieve a great outcome has been mentally preparing for that outcome the entire time. And so, they're not surrounded by fuckos. They're not a fucko. And think, how many business owners do you know that have a big windfall of cash that completely blow it? Only the one that you looked at and you already knew they were going to blow it because of the way they were living, even when they were trying to flex that they were rich when they were not.
Exactly.
That's the guy who blows it when he has the windfall. But everyone else has that windfall, they tend to do well. And then what do? They reinvest it. They start another business. They tend to do well.
I get this.
Like Felix.
When I was 24, I remember I had like an insane week playing poker, and I made $1 million in a week. And
hell of a week, sir.
I saw you at the nightclub that weekend.
Yeah, I was definitely at the nightclub that weekend.
Yeah.
And I was always like kind of like a responsible person, but there was a part of me that never felt like, I felt weird about the money. Like I didn't feel like I had earned it because it just came so quickly.
I would say that's equivalent of like
part of
winning the
me
lottery.
like felt like guilty about it. Like I didn't deserve it. And I did like a lot of dumb things with it. I didn't buy like a Bugatti with it, but like I was like loose with it. I put it in some dumb investment. Like I didn't feel like I had like really earned it, even though I did. Like I had spent years like studying the game, but like it's not like it just came so fast and so easily. And like I was young, and I just I felt like this loose attachment to it. Like I didn't like hold on to it. Like if I had just taken that money and just squirreled it all away immediately in the S&P, like I'd just be retired right now.
I noticed that same phenomenon with like crypto people, like NFT traders and stuff back in 2021, where they would like have like so much paper wealth, but they would treat it so differently than if it was like real money, I suppose.
You see this among professional, like I hung out with a lot of professional gamblers, very loose with money. They do not like versus you hang out with like real estate guys who've like slowly grinded up tens of millions of dollars. They're like freaking misers.
Yeah. Nick really tight with the nickel.
I mean, God, like,
I mean, it's a part of the ethos of gambling. Like that's literally in the DNA.
I feel like the S&P was like $600 when I did that. Is that right?
No.
Jesus. Don't,
no.
I hope not.
Wait, no. I actually Yeah, no. I think so. Wait, what year was this? This is 2008.
It's been 84 years.
Yeah, 2008. When I made the S&P was $800. So if I just put all that in the S&P.
Jesus.
S&P 6,000 now. That's crazy, actually, that the S&P was 800 back then.
Wow.
Damn.
Woof.
I know.
Hey, we're at 6,000?
Deep bear market.
I mean, not almost.
Okay.
Almost.
I had like
almost back, baby.
a similar amount. Like in our business, we just started distributing cash every month, and it kept going up and up and up. And it was post-tax money because we had the tax payments inside the company. And I was like, oh wow, this is growing kind of around the amount you're saying. And I think that first amount I invested in the dumbest ways possible. I even went to like a financial advisor, and he was like recommending individual stocks, and I was like, well, I guess this is what you're supposed to do when you're rich. And then like put in this like closed end money in a closed end fund and this, and then like started talking to someone who was actually really rich, and he was like, what are you doing? He's like, why are you talking to this guy? Like, I know him. What are you doing?
I know him.
And I was like, what do you mean? He's a financial advisor. He's got a bunch of wealthy clients. He's like, oh God. And he's just like, let's go for a walk. Takes me for a walk. We talk for an hour, and he's like, just keep it simple, kid. Like, you got a cash flow machine. You need to like slow your roll. You don't do any of these individual stocks. Don't invest in like private companies, closed end funds. I don't know. But yeah, that first money was lit on fire, and probably would have been 10x.
Dude, I wish I had. Did you have like a mentor back then? I didn't have like
not like an investor mentor. No one
had one.
Had like business mentors, but not one be like, this is what you do when you have money. You know.
When I grew up, I didn't know anybody who had money ever.
Right.
Ever.
You know how I said like I can be a bit of an algo? Like I have this document that, and in general, I'm always tracking and thinking about the people in my life and who are the experts in every domain and arena.
Smart.
Always ready for like who to call for a certain thing.
Whoa, you have a spreadsheet like that?
Oh my God.
It's a CRM, dude.
So it's like, who's the best, like by far, legal person, real estate person, financial advisor person, entrepreneur, and then like who's the one that has had exit at this level or that level and would advise me, who's the one that's been through like a merger of this type or an acquisition of this type, to just when you hit that moment in life to know who to pick up the phone and
I suppose
call.
we're all doing that, like in our own mental Rolodexes.
But maybe subconsciously, right? Not intentionally.
My reaction was more visceral, but I think I'm also doing that. As you mentioned, all these
because I think
domains,
it's critical.
I know who to call for everything you mentioned.
He mentioned that he literally has like an actual Rolodex.
Yeah, I even have like a Rolodex of like dream people to work with and hire, like achieve X. I'm always thinking like 10 years ahead, and then you wake up one day and you are there, and the moment arises, and it's such a nice feeling to know like I was ready for this. I planned this.
You know, a lot of the problems in my own life when I talk to you.
You don't like your positioning in the Rolodex.
I'm just like, I don't do any of that. This explains a lot.
But like,
what are we doing?
But when you need to do something, things just magically happen. So it's not like you say you don't do that, but then you need to ask a question.
People.
You need to raise money. You need this, technical expert. It just like happens. So like you've unconsciously, obviously done this.
Yeah, that's a personality thing. That's the way I approach it. Some people just feel it in the moment.
You're the closet algo.
Yeah, I might be.
Didn't know.
Oh, Nick and I have a lot of algo similarities.
Yeah.
He's just king algo.
Yeah.
Like algo diagonal, non-algo.
Yeah. Also, yeah.
So if you guys are the investors, I feel like you should be the.
I know who to call. So does Steven. That's your point.
I don't think anybody's ever called me an investor.
Really? What do they call you, trader?
I mean, I wouldn't call myself an investor.
I
probably should.
I love when we're out in public in a group and like some random like woman or just random person goes, so what do you do? And I just look at Steven. I'm like, can't wait to see how you're going to explain this.
What's going to come out of his mouth?
I just tell them I'm a trader.
All right. You're a trader. And then you kind of have to like validate a little bit because like they're like, oh, he's one of those. He's one of those guys who thinks they can day trade and like make money.
It depends on who's asking.
No, they don't think that. Nobody thinks that. Like people who don't know anything about this stuff are just like, oh yeah, trading makes money. They don't think about it. That's stuff that like Eric thinks.
Yeah. No, it depends on who's asking. Because I've been out.
That's stuff that I think.
I've been out with Steven before, and like some woman comes up that he's not interested in, and he does not say I'm a trader. He says something fucking ridiculous.
I trade. He says I trade cartoons on the internet.
Yes, that's exactly what he said. I trade cartoons on the internet just to get her to fuck off.
Go away.
It's not wrong.
Little did you know that's what she's into.
She's like, oh, this is my favorite cartoon. And then he proceeds to look up that cartoon.
Is there a token?
And buy the token for the cartoon. So
I forgot about that.
Who's laughing now?
Yeah.
Those are definitely signs of froth in retrospect.
Money is an emotional topic for people, right? And everyone has like a pretty interesting relationship with it. And a lot of it has to do with how you grew up with money. And a lot of people feel guilt about money and their relationship with money. And sometimes maybe you have a big windfall and maybe there's some guilt in it and you get rid of it quickly or you misuse it or whatever. And a lot of it comes down to like your relationship with money and how you grew up with it. And I was just realizing like the way he was talking about the benefits of money. I've gone through all these like waves and cycles in my life where I like really wanted it and then really was like, no, be more, purpose and mission driven and focused and the money will follow. And then now I'm like kind of in this mode again, especially with the way he writes and how poetic it is and the benefits and the freedom. I think it's incredible. And I like have this reignited passion for riches without guilt. And to just yes. And I think that it's very powerful because it's time freedom, but also as Naval talks about, it's actually not time we're after; it's attention freedom, because it's it's about what you decide to give your attention to, not just the ability to have time. The time is one layer, 1 degree removed from the question of your attention, and so I want to give my attention to things that matter more.
Like a house staff.
Or, not to get too sappy, but like, right now, the amount of time I spend with I have 2 daughters, but the one that I can like play with right now, who's, 2 years and some change, is like, there's 30 minutes in the day that her and I just every day, we play, we laugh, we do the bedtime routine. I read her, 3 or 4 books. It is by far the best experience of my day. To know that I could have hours of that in a day, one day, is worth everything.
I understand that. I'm just going to take the complete opposite take from you. Because like
the opposite take? Like that sucks?
No, I think that this is the Mexican fisherman parable. Like you can spend all the time.
Already there?
You can spend all the time with your daughter you want.
Thinking the same thing.
Right now. I think that money...
But like, not with the...
No, I think that what's important... I hope we still get to this like Von Deeper, but maybe we're having it right now. Like the point that
What is the Von Deeper?
The point that I want to illustrate is that...
It doesn't relate to this.
I thought it was this.
No.
Oh yeah, no, it is.
It is?
How do you find meaning when you no longer need to work?
No, that was the audible Von Deeper.
No, that was the Von Deeper.
You're mistaken.
No, that was supposed to be the audible.
No, that was
you guys
it.
are not listening to me.
No, the audible was Kanye.
No,
no, the audible was nostalgia.
Kanye was never on this.
The audible was nostalgia.
I love when we argue over the topics.
No, nostalgia was the main thing.
Can I get to my point here? Please. Can I get to my point?
Please.
My point about this is that I think that when you say you want all this money, I think you're ignoring the fact that there's like a utility function of money that like what's the term when it starts like
diminishing returns?
Diminishing returns. Yeah. Like over time, like once you have sort of like 10 million, if your number's 25, like you're going to realize that to get to 11 doesn't actually add as much to your
totally
life
agree with
as
you.
you like really think.
No, I totally
Can
agree.
you? Does anyone have like a good back of the napkin to know if you have enough? Like, what's the like?
What is it like?
Because people say the 4% rule, so it's
Yeah.
like,
Well,
okay,
if you just like take all your cash and put it into treasuries at 4%, and that pays for your entire
11
lifestyle.
million.
Treasury.
but like, how do you
income
know?
divided
Like,
by
what
two.
if you live off $50,000 a year, which a lot of people do, and so they're like, so what's my number? Like, what do I need to like? And with the assumption that you die with like the last bit of money in your bank account, right? Like, because I think the 4% rule implies
I don't like doing that because you're going to run yourself down. Then you're going to get to the singularity, and you're not going to have enough money to live forever. And you're going to make a huge mistake. You can't do that. You could
Did
only
not
you
put
focus
that in
on
the formula.
income. Yeah, we're not doing these like reverse annuity things or whatever.
Yeah. Because that's the one that goes around the most. I feel like we need to create a new one, a new back of the napkin that's like better than the 4%
I
rule.
feel like the math isn't that hard.
What should the math be?
I like, to me, it's like entirely income based. I don't like to think about like dragging down the capital. Right?
Okay.
So then you just think about like the risk free rate on it, plus a little bit, bump it up like a couple points.
All right.
And then just take that and then just put it in your tax bracket, and there's your income.
Okay,
if
but
you
like,
can live off
what if
that, you're
you
good.
what if you don't own a house and you want to own a house eventually? So you need to transfer. You basically, are you saying turn that into like an income number,
But
a
as long
monthly?
as it's only income, then like your capital is like appreciating in the background. It should like go up over time and give you the money to do that. Like if you're just purely living on the income from the capital, and then you're just free rolling all the capital appreciation, you're good.
But what about, I don't know, there's like one-time expenses that happen in life. I mean, they happen in a given year, right?
Either
Like
you have to draw down the capital. That's fine, but it's just
That's
gonna be
okay.
a tiny nick, right? I mean, like you get like $10 million to like get your nest egg.
so you want a $4 million house. What do you do?
You shouldn't be buying a $4 million house if you're retired and that's your thing.